couch at the time. I had no money. I didn't have a job after college. All my friends had left, had graduated. I just had a passion. I wanted to figure out how I can help other people. And I was giving a presentation in front of a group of my peers at the Entrepreneurship Center at the University of Delaware. And Bildad St. Louis walked in the room, sat in the back of the room, and observed. And I was talking about peer support. I was talking about telehealth. I didn't know anything about any of these things, but I wanted to learn, and I wanted to understand what this could mean. And after I had spoken, Bildad raised his hand and he said, "Hey, come talk to me." And I did. I got his email. We met the next day, and we spoke for nearly 3 hours in a Dunkin' Donuts on Main Street. And we didn't just talk about telehealth. And we didn't just talk about telehealth. We didn't just talk about peer support. We talked about family. We talked about faith. We talked about depression. We talked about losing loved ones. And we made a connection in that moment. And that was over 2 years ago. And I still talk to this guy every single day. Him and Carl Sharperson have been an amazing, amazing coaches and mentors to me. They are both much smarter than I am, much more accomplished than I am, but they saw something in me and they gave me the opportunity. They didn't want money. They didn't want my time. They wanted to help me be successful because they saw that I wanted to help others provide support for each other. And that's how I'm here today, to be able to speak in front of you guys, is because I allowed myself to heal. I allowed myself to believe that there was something on this earth that was worth staying for. And I found people like Bildad who helped me understand what that means and help push me through my own limitations. So today I would like to...
I just want to say a couple of things. Thank you for sharing that, Darian. Just to kind of, we don't have a lot of time, but the peer support piece, what we did, what we're focused on before we can get into this. I used to like to tell my story a little bit because it works, right? So I'm the person, if you tell me, you show me someone else that did it, that means I can do it too, period, right? So I'm looking for proof. It worked for you, it can work for me, I don't care what it is, right? And my unshakable faith tells me that everything is promised to me if I believe and you give God 100%, not 99%. So the problem is a lot of times you say, oh, you got all the tools, you have everything, but you say, okay, I'm going to try to do it my way for this 2%, and it doesn't work, and you get disappointed, and it fails, right? So if you really trust God about it and give him 100%, and then you find other people doing it too that can help you and give you the confidence to move it forward, whatever it is, it typically will work. And I say that to say that when I met Darian, the key thing for me, I was going through a serious depression, 8 deaths in 16 months. My business partner overdosed. I lost my brother. I lost a friend. I lost a grandmother. I lost 8 people in my life, and so much more trauma than the pandemic hits. And I can tell you so much more. I was that guy. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't know how to handle it either. And the challenge for me was is not believing that I'm a confident person. This can't happen to me. So accepting the fact that I was at that point was even harder. So that made it hard to have a discussion about it with anybody because Bildad doesn't feel he's doing really well, right? So we want to present ourselves as like the inner and the outer, and it really humbled me in a big way. I don't have a lot of time to tell my full story. I can tell you this, the ability, before my brother passed away, one of the things that we were doing is I told him, you can call me 24/7 anytime, whatever you need, right? I said, and I made sure that I would spend days and nights up just anticipating that he'd call me whether he called me or not. But I gave him a bridge to me, right? Because I understood him. He knew me. He trusted me. We had a shared experience. We're both PKs. We both have a lot of pressure. We both have things going on. We're all different people, but ultimately we understood each other, and not because it was just my brother. But there was a lot of trust, and that created a safe space. And that safe space, I believe, worked miracles for his wellness and then my wellness as well. In the ministry, as a pastor's kid, I understand every single pastor's kid, 38 years, there's so much pressure, right? And there's this expectation of these things that people expect you to do. And 99% of the time, right, they're false expectations, right? And you don't get a chance to really manifest the best of you because this is pressure. And it's really stressful and it's really hard. I left, my brother and my sister were here. I said, you guys can do the church. I'm going to DC. I stayed as far away as possible, not because I didn't want to serve. It's just because I didn't know how to deal with that pressure, right? But I was smart enough to know that you still got to keep moving. You still got to work through it. So it was just my safe space was leaving, right? That's not the solution that I think works all the time. So ultimately what I'm saying is that the simple being able to talk to somebody about this thing called whatever, pressure, my wife, my family, like the church, whatever it is, right? And creating a support group for pastors' kids, let's say, in my world, goes a long way. Back to what we're doing in Delaware, we created a company called Compass Peer Services. We offer peer support services for students, academic, dealing with suicide, mental health at University of Delaware. We launched it about a year ago. We were the fastest growing public-private partnership in Delaware. We've received every award in just a year. And I say that not to talk about the accolades, I'm saying it to say it works. So what we're doing, we created a safe place, a place called Sean's House, where people can go in 24/7, because I can talk to another student that's dealing with an issue, just to have a conversation, and it works. So, I'm here today after talking to AWMI and understanding that we have a similar vision as to create these support groups, and they're already doing it to help enable. I don't know what it is yet, so we're not coming in here and saying we know what it is, we know everybody's problems, but we're here to help you provide the solution, create the solution to provide these support networks, because it works. It doesn't cost any money to do it, right? So helping every church create peer support groups for pastors, for women's life. So pastors need peer support just like I need peer support, right? So helping you mobilize and create those support groups because it works. So the premise of that is we want to bring it to our community, and we're here to kind of share what that is, how that works, allow you guys to ask questions, how to get it started, because a lot of the times it's like, how do you do it? So I get that question, that's the question, the most, how, Bill, Dad? So I want to create the open dialogue to help you figure out how to do it, because it works, right? And so kind of talking about, what does it mean to, how do we, maximize that? Well, after you get your mental support, like, how do you be able to keep talking to somebody? So it's a hybrid of solutions based on what your needs are that I believe are key to success. And I'm just an integrator. So I'm just trying to bring everybody together to figure that out, right? Fair enough? Cool.
Next slide, please. So before we kind of have this open dialogue, as Bildad mentioned, I'd like to first kind of give an overview of what peer support is. So peer support is the process of giving and receiving encouragement and assistance to achieve long-term recovery. And I'll define what recovery means in this context. But peer supporters offer emotional support, they share knowledge, they teach skills, provide practical assistance, and connect people with resources, opportunities, communities of support, people, and to God. Peer support is, I'd like to just say that peer support is not therapy, it's not psychiatry, and the relationship between peers is that of both individuals sharing lived experiences with, whether that's trauma, depression, mental health challenges, addiction. It is that relationship built between two individuals who have walked down that same path. Next slide, please. So the role of a peer support, first, identifying a peer. A peer is an individual whom someone can identify with in some capacity, whether that is age, gender, faith, language, etc. It is somebody that we can relate to and that we can identify with. A peer specialist is a person who identifies and supports their peers who are experiencing a behavioral health, which is a mental health or substance use challenge, by reducing stigma, connecting them with resources, and promoting wellness throughout their journey in recovery. So the relationship between the peers and the peer specialist is governed by these shared experiences and characteristics, cultural influences, and interests that are fostered in a safe and compassionate community and environment. So, for empowering youth in faith-based settings, peer support is an opportunity for all youth to foster their stewardship and servant leadership potential, to build community, and seek out the many ways that they can serve as disciples of Christ. Through peer support training and firsthand experience, youth can learn to grow a heart for service, practice leadership skills, develop meaningful career paths, improve their prayer life, and become an active role and voice for recovery in the church and in their community. So just briefly on the history of peer support started as a deinstitutionalization movement. So back in the 1950s and 60s, people were institutionalized, meaning they were put in mental health asylums because of their race, because of their sexual orientation, because of depression, because of anxiety, because of anger, because of trauma. And in these settings, they were abused. They were held against their will. They were physically and verbally abused by staff and by other patients. And they were really not given the services and the treatment and the opportunity to heal in these settings. So after some reform in the 1970s, people who were institutionalized in these settings got together and said, how can we help each other heal from the trauma that we experienced as individuals and as patients or consumers of these inpatient or hospital settings. And it really started as a movement for civil rights and for humane treatment for people with mental illness. So in the present, peer support is recognized as an evidence-based practice, and it is practiced in all 50 U.S. states across the country and various U.S. territories and many other countries worldwide. And in the future, peer support will be integrated into all different forms of healthcare and different communities that are focused on recovery and on healing. Next slide, please. So just to define recovery real quick, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration defines recovery as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And the definition of recovery is broken down into 4 dimensions, and those dimensions are health, an individual's health, their home, their environment, their community, the people that surround themselves with, and their purpose, their reason for being, their reason for continuing and for healing. And next slide, please. And these 4 dimensions are broken down into 10 guiding principles. The first being hope, and hope is the most important one. It is the first step, it is the second step, and it is every step in between. If an individual does not have hope that they can recover, then they will not be able to follow and work through that process and that journey. Recovery is person-driven, meaning the individual in recovery drives their own recovery journey. They decide what works best for them, and they decide which paths to take along the way. There are many pathways to recovery. There is not one path that an individual must take in order to reach recovery. And that goes back to it being person-driven and having that choice. So recovery recognizes that there are many pathways, there are many stories, and many journeys that an individual can take. And there are opportunities for failure, and that may be part of the process as well. Recovery is holistic, meaning that it goes beyond traditional therapy, it goes beyond traditional healthcare. It, again, has many different pathways, and it can utilize resources that are beyond the scope of what we traditionally think mental health recovery to look like. Recovery utilizes peer support. So again, that shared experience between individuals who have both dealt with trauma, both dealt with depression, both have been along that path of recovery. It is relational, so it is a mutual relationship, and it is grounded in that relationship. So the relationship between the peer and the peer specialist is very important for fostering that environment for healing and recovery to happen. Recovery acknowledges culture. It acknowledges diversity. It acknowledges that everybody's story is a little bit different. Peer support and recovery addresses trauma. Trauma can be big trauma. It can be significant emotional events, as Carl discussed, or it can be little trauma. It can be the loss of a job. It can be stress-induced. It can be the inability to get good grades and to thrive academically. Recovery leverages strengths. It is a strength-focused approach. Instead of trying to fix things that are wrong, it focuses on doubling down on the things that individuals have and are using as their strengths already. And lastly, recovery values respect. Respect for the individuals, for their stories, respecting them regardless of the mistakes that they've made and the behaviors that they've engaged in, to show them that there is compassion and that there is an opportunity for healing in that environment. Next slide, please. So for training and certification for peer specialists, a certified peer recovery specialist is an individual with lived experience in recovery who shares their stories to educate, to support, and to advocate for others. And throughout training and throughout the everyday work of the peer specialists, their role is broken down into 4 domains, and those domains are advocacy, ethical responsibility, which means that even though you are meeting somebody where they are and speaking in their own terms, you are still a professional as a peer specialist, and there are still ethical responsibilities associated with that profession. There is mentorship and education, mentoring individuals in recovery and educating communities about recovery and about peer support. And then there is recovery and wellness support. And wellness can be broken down into many different dimensions. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be social, it can be the environment, it could be financial, it could be occupational, it can be intellectual, and it can be spiritual as well. So just to wrap up, I want to thank you again for allowing me to share my story. As I mentioned, I'm only 24 years old, and I'm still in recovery. Recovery for me doesn't end, has not ended, and it continues to push me forward and continues to give me purpose and help me heal. So I'm still learning, I'm still healing, I'm still recovering, and I'm still finding God. I'm still young. I am still young, and through my work, Bildad had mentioned the work we were doing in Delaware. We've been able to provide resources for nearly 3,000 students at the University of Delaware. Over 500 students have come to speak with our peer specialists. We have trained over 100 young adults who identify as having lived experiences with depression, with eating disorders, with thoughts of suicide, with substance use, and they are willing to use their voice to support others, and we've had over 500 students come to meet with them, and we've saved nearly 30 lives. We've had 30 young adults who have come and said, I'm ready to move on with this life, and we have helped them find that hope and that purpose and helped put them on that path for recovery. So I'm still young, and I believe that young people like me are in need of these services. They are in need of God's light the most. And I believe that through sharing these experiences with their peers, they will be more willing to say, I need help. They'll be more willing to say, I'm not doing okay. And they will be more comfortable using that and using these practices and principles in recovery to accept healing, accept God, and find, again, their own journey throughout recovery so that they can find a life that's worth living to them. And it's communities like these that will help us believe and give us the willpower to heal and to understand that God is good and He has a purpose for all of us. So thank you.
And I just want to add, so we're opening up a location. I just opened up an office in Harvard Square, our Boston location. We're going to be partnering with Harvard and all these universities locally as a training hub to connect with the ability to have the freedom, I call it, right? The ability to have the freedom to work with a university, then work with my faith-based people, right? Which is not always the case. Sometimes your vision gets courted because you have to conform this. I don't conform with anybody, right? So one of my companies is called Everlasting Freedom, right? So I'm free, and I have the ability to help my people and to bring them to the Harvards, right, and give them access to the resources that they need. And there's no limitation. I'm looking for the best. So I've gone that far, and I went to the best to make that happen. So we're opening up that. It's already open on Harvard Square, 33 Church Street. And we're going to be launching that. We're working on a partnership and funding on that in the next 12 months. So this is our second location. Then we're going to go to the next state. Then me and Steve are going to take it to the Dominican Republic, right? Then we're going into Haiti. Then we're going. So we have a big vision, right? And so why am I here? Because AWMI has a shared vision. We share the same vision. Why am I working with Dr. Jill? We share the same vision. Why am I working with Steve? So it's not by accident. I don't believe in accidents. God divinely put us together for the right reasons. The hardest thing in business is to find good people. The hardest thing in life is to find, right, sanctified people that believe in your vision, right? And I don't negotiate with that. So we are getting off the ground. Pastor AWMI is, the goal is to open up a location here, mobilize help, whether it's pastor, I don't know the pastor's names. All your churches are different hubs, right? And you create these different hubs. Why are those hubs important? To serve your community and then to serve your extended community, right? And so I can tell you there's a major need right now in Massachusetts for exactly what we're talking about. So I'm not talking empty right now, right? It's time to get to work, right? So the goal is to help identify where those needs are. So you might have this pastor might have this. Once we identify, how do you work together, right? So we all have this and we can go forward, right? Because I can't step forward if I don't know it's going to work and we're not strong enough. So it's being sustainable. My two words are predictability and sustainability, right? Consistency, right? I'm working on consistency. I'm working on that every day. These guys help me every day on that, right? But really, I understand how to create predictable situations. So you can't go to the state and say, I'm going to provide this service if your church, show me evidence, right? It's not going to be able to stand on its own. So it's not predictable. So I know that, so the problem with our church is you start these services and then next week it's not there. So I need help. So I can't even trust my community. Then your people leave. They leave to go somewhere else. Because the youth group that was on fire, right? Every Friday and then 2 years later, it's gone. No one's there, right? And so guess what? I'm going to go find someone else who has it for me. Can you blame them? No. So it's okay, and you don't need 1,000 members in your church. You just got to have one and have a vision and just get started and work, right? So the question of, yeah, I lost my members in my church, I don't know what to do. Yeah, it's a problem, but are you prepared to fix it, right? They need this. Do you have that for them, right? And so, I'm here to help you find those solutions that are sustainable financially, spiritually, mentally, physically, so on and so forth, right? There's a lot of fruit in doing the work and serving. All I do is serve. I figured out how to make my business serving others. That's all I do. And it works. So we are our patient people need this right now, right? They need it. They need it. I started with one peer support group. Now I have my husband's 5 guys, me, Daniel, Gene Lewis. I have a little group over there. Now I have my business peer support group. Then I got like my executive, Carl, all these guys. I have multiple peer support groups to fill what I need, right? And so it doesn't start with one thing. So you have, this is a thing that's going to be immersive and growing. We can help you get that started, right? I don't have any judgment on who it is. How can I help you? That's what we want to figure out. What are your questions? And, how do we move forward from here? So that's kind of what I want to leave it with.
Okay.
I love these moments because yesterday at the University of Delaware, there's only 5 people in our conference. Because I know my vision, I can see a million people in here.
Yes.
It's gonna grow.
Yes,
So we got
yes.
started, and that's how I think.
Yes.
The opportunity to grow it is where we are today.
OK, so vous nous capable ba ou yon résumé de ça qui passé la matin. Très important pour capable comprendre connexion yo. Nous commencer d'abord avec I Will Till I'm Well qui partenaire ensemble avec AWMI. Programme ça li présenté avec Dr. Jill Woveris et Steve qui c'est partenaire li. Donc moun sa yo même tout bagay yo get en place déjà pour capable connecter ensemble avec nous avec yo pour que en partnership pour que nous capable recevoir genre de service ça yo qui a aidé nous même n'a prié mais yo même ensemble avec nous n'a fait travail mental spirituel etc. qui besoin fait là. As a matter of fact dans réseau AWMI là nous gagnons un corner chaque lundi soir pour jeunes garçons. Nous connaissons que jeunes garçons ça yo qui c'est petit membre AWMI yo gen fila da tout. M'a dit jeunes en général, yo va le connecter avec peer support que Bildad ensemble avec Dorian gain together.
Yes, Ralph Musso.
But at the same time, pendant que Ralph a fait ça ensemble avec yo dans AWMI, ça veut dire chaque lundi soir qu'on est là tout jeunes yo qu'on est là et Ralph ensemble avec Bildad, ensemble avec Dorian, il a connecté ensemble qu'on a pour programme ça fait pour monde capable tendre. C'est ça fait que nous gagnons ligne qui existait depuis pendant Covid là pour que travail ça a commencé fait. Donc on est là, ça lui même l'a fait non niveau jeune. Pas docteur Gilles là avec Steve là a fait lui même dans niveau yes, comme si dans le jeudi soir dans niveau counseling que toute communauté a besoin, mais nous ba ou yon ti hint le jeudi soir. Mais après ça, on a référé avec programme que nous gagnons et qui campait en forme et qui déjà a marché déjà, qui c'est Dr. Jill ensemble avec Steve ensemble. Yes. 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 We're starting now and we're moving forward. The Creole, yes. Et ensuite, qu'on y a Carl lui-même, qui te fait présentation par là et qui côté li fit dans tout bagay ça li fit dans côté que en pile fois dans penser pas nous gain tendance qu'on est là c'est chaque monde fait ti pa yo chaque monde fait ti pa yo c'est genre de mentalité ça que nous gagnons nous mêmes haïtiens. Nous avons commencé à faire petit pas nous en tant que madame pasteur, mais nous voyons que ce n'est pas ça qui est problème, non. Ce n'est pas ça qui est solution, ça ne va pas solutionner le problème, non. C'est ça qui fait que nous ouvrons le courrier là, ce n'est pas pour madame pasteur, nous ouvrons à toute fille. Là, nous regardons, ce n'est pas ça qui solution toujours, parce que petite nous y aurait derrière, donc nous ouvrons pour petite nous. Ce n'est pas ça qui solution qu'on y a, nous ouvrons pour tout le monde, tout partout, côté. Est-ce que nous comprenons vision avec mission AWMI là? Parce que c'est pas petit pas là ou à faire parce que ou gon plus gros problème toujours. Donc, on est là, on fait partnership avec tout le monde. C'est ça fait que nous comptons, nous gagnons avec nos présidents et l'association des pasteurs, là, pasteur Claire Vaux qui là. Il chita tout doucement, il ne pas parler, mais tandis que je connais que la prend note. Parce que travail, nous, c'est travail sans accueillir. Travail AWMI, c'est travail sans accueillir. Donc, et travail Carla lui-même, c'est lui-même la fait connexion avec unité dans mi-temps nous tous. Dans mi-temps tout le monde qui utilise plateforme côté que yo gen yon bagay a fait, mais lui-même li connecter nous tous ensemble. C'est ça que Carl fait lui-même à travers et présentation nan, livre lia et tout le travail que le pral fait ensemble avec nous, la connecter nous tous ensemble. Ça veut dire que le travail ça pas prêté ici à jodi là, son bagay qui a explosé quand même comme ouais, Bildad is fired up. Right? Et Bildad wants to go all the way, exactement. So, nous disons bon Dieu merci parce que là, nous avons prié pour petit nous, nous avons besoin d'involver tout. C'est ça qui fait que Bildad là. C'est ça qui fait que Daphné là. Donc, tout de suite après, lorsque nous terminons Kounia là, si Pasteur Daphné là, est she here? Okay, she's here. Pasteur Daphné, lui-même, il gagne, il peut faire une sorte de follow-up, mais ça c'est pour les gens qui veulent arrêter et qui est très important. C'est pour les gens qui veulent arrêter, c'est pour jeunes leaders qui sont dans la communauté. Parce qu'en pile fois, nous, même adultes, nous n'avons pas fait pas nous, mais les jeunes nous qui sont leaders, nous pas occupés. C'est ça qui fait, il y a le jeune américain, nous pas qu'à complaindre qu'il y a dans l'église américaine, il y a fait tout bagay dans américain parce que nous pas bail encadrement, c'est nous mêmes seulement qui dans tout bagay pour contre nous. Nous pas qu'à oublier parce que depuis nous pas bail au travail pour aller. Et depuis nous pas considérer ici, yo pas le jeune côté, yo pas accepter avec degré, 100 degrés avec degré, quelque chose depuis yo paraît, yo pas yo mettre mes sous yo et puis nous fin préparer yo, nous fin prier pour yo, la fin nous fait cadeau yo. Et yo pas jamais virer regarder derrière encore. Yo prier côté yo te sorti. Nous tout gain exemple ça yo la caille nous. Donc c'est peut-être ça et parti pasteur Daphné, c'est parti côté que jeune leader yo, nous grand pile petit jeune leader qui là qui peut rester ensemble avec lui, mais si qui est adulte, parents, qui a besoin d'entendre et comprendre et ça qu'a fait ensemble avec eux, nous m'avons pour capable rester parce que de monsieur ça a ensemble avec eux as well, right? Okay. So nous moi voulais une annonce qui est très important pour moun et pour 3h30 lorsque nous allons manger.
This year, Peabody Marriott Hotel is home to AWMI 2021 Conference avec l'Association des femmes au ministère international. Thème, unité, uniformité, conformité, tiré de Romains 12, verset 2 et Philippiens 3, verset 16. Info, pasteur Mireille Daniel, 857 312 92 87. Laura Chirac, 267 572 12 19.